Hello, welcome to the Pursuit of Excellence with me, Anthony Beirudi. Need your help real quick. If you like the videos, hit the thumbs up button right below, and please subscribe to get access to our latest interviews. Hit the subscribe button right there. Also, we'd love to hear from you about our interviews. In the comment section, tell us who you want us to interview or what you thought about the whole thing. Without further ado, enjoy the interview. Alrighty, we're very excited. We're joined by Kristmanson. Thank you very much for joining us, Al.
My pleasure, buddy. Anytime.
Awesome. So let's go back to the beginning. When did you get started with basketball? Where'd you grow up? And was there other sports when you started out?
Yeah, so I'm an old timer. So yeah, back in the 70s, we kind of played everything, which I think really helped my development. But I grew up in Ladner, went to Delta. Back there, but then it was single A and double A, and I was very fortunate to have a great high school coach at Neil Murray. He played at UBC. He's a great player. And you know, back in those days at 6'6", you were playing in the post. It was automatic back in those days. And he saw something in me. And I actually played point a lot, which really helped my development. You know, once I made the national team, I obviously wasn't be playing in the post at 6'6". So yeah, I played a lot of stuff. Played hockey. You know, I remember crying the day I had to quit hockey in grade 10, man. Once I chose basketball, I mean, I loved hockey. Played soccer a little bit of lacrosse. Yeah, so I kind of played everything, but by grade 10, basketball is my thing. And yeah, we had a great run at Delta. It was good.
So talk a little bit about that run. So obviously Delta's, you know, back then it was a power. What was that like? What was it like being around people that were like-minded and wanted to play basketball?
Yeah, like Delta hadn't been to the provincials in years, and you know, we were a single A school, but we decided to go double in a grade 11, 12 years because we were pretty good. We weren't very deep. We had about 6 guys. You know, we had 9 players, but we had about 6 that we could go to. So we were ranked 1 a lot of that year, but Burnaby South beat us at the provincials. But Ladner is a really unique community, you know, and the town really got behind it. And we just, you know, I remember we had just massive turnouts for games against South Delta and North Delta. You know, those are really, you know, Bill Edwards teams back in the North Delta days were just really, really strong. And they had that reputation. They were tough and physical. Guys like Jamie Buis, Mike Berger, and great players, and we were able to get past them my grade 12 year to get a provincial. So yeah, that was pretty cool back in those days. Because Delta, there's a lot of pressure on us because we were ranked pretty high, but Delta hadn't done it in a long time, and we really felt that pressure for sure.
Absolutely. So outside your high school, what, like in the spring and summer, what were you doing to get better? What was like? Do you remember what like your day schedule was like? Did you play on any summer teams?
I played provincial team a little bit. I mean, there was no club stuff back then, so. I would say 2 things really affected my development. Number 1 was Neil introducing me to Howard Kelsey. Howard, you know, was a maniac. He was in the gym every day, and I used to go out to UBC and work out with him and his brother Doug. So I really saw probably by my grade 11 year what it took to get to that next level. Howard was national team by that time. Howard's a few years older than I was. So that was my first introduction to really seeing what it took to become elite by yourself. Then from then it was just, you know, it's the old story, get to know the janitor at the school. And I'd be in the gym every day at 6:30 before school started. That was really my time. And then I really had trouble putting weight on. I was a super, like, here's a classic for you. In grade 12, my first year in the national team, I was 30 pounds heavier than I was in my grade 12 year. I mean, I was like 6'6", 165 in grade 12. Like, wow. Dude, I could not, you know, I knew what the gym was and I was in the gym, but I was just late, you know, really late. So I spent a lot of time at it. And then the next thing that probably influenced me was Stan Stewartson was trying to recruit me to Simon Fraser. So he had me up to SFU a fair amount in grade 11 and 12, you know, hanging out with Jay and some of the other national team guys. SFU had a lot of national team guys at that time, and just getting absolutely, you know, thrown around the gym by those guys in my grade 11, 12 year, you know, really made me realize, okay, it's going to put the time in and keep moving, or it's going to end here pretty quick. So those are probably the 2 things that really influenced my off season. And yeah, grade 11, 12, I put a ton of time in for sure.
Absolutely. Very cool. And that's important to see what the best look like and kind of give yourself something to aspire to and something to work towards. I think that's what's led to a lot of people's success, and it's good to have somebody out there like that. Now, when you finished your high school career
Yeah.
you know, you're a good player, but you're not the player you end up becoming.
No.
What ended up making you decide to go to Simon Fraser? What were kind of the things that led to that being the spot for you?
Well, I really liked what was going on there. Like, there's a ton of national team guys there at that time, and they played in the NAI against really good American schools. So I just felt it was the best of both worlds, and that we could play against, you know, I wasn't a Div 1 guy, but we could play against American schools and stay close to home. You know, that was really something I thought that was really good. And at that time, I'm not sure if the rules are the same now, but the Div 1 schools could play, I think it was 2 out-of-country teams a year. So we played Div 1 schools at the start of every year. And we played Stanford and UCLA, Washington State. We played a lot of really, really good Div 1 schools. So that was pretty cool too. So, you know, kinesiology and education was something I was interested in as well. And I just, you know, I really liked the way Jay played. Tom Skurlak was a guy I really looked up to. He could really shoot it. And I just kind of, those are the type of guys I just kind of wanted to be around if I was, you know, if I was good. At that time, I didn't really have national team aspirations. I didn't, you know, like I said, I was such a late bloomer physically. But I just liked the program, and I liked what Stan was doing. And, you know, he coached with intensity. And you know what? And Stan was a great recruiter. I mean, he was an incredibly good recruiter. And I really liked what he was selling. It was good.
Let's talk about that real quick, because I think a lot of people don't really get what makes a great recruiter. So what did you, looking back, it's been some time now, but looking back, there must have been a couple things that really stuck with you when he was trying to get you to go there. What made him a great recruiter?
Well, I have 2 examples of it. So number 1 is when I played, and number 2, I coached them later at Simon Fraser. So recruiting is a full-time job. Like, that's, as a coach, you're not a head coach, you're a head recruiter. Like, if that's not your attitude about recruiting, then you're not a good recruiter. Like, you have to be recruiting, you know, nonstop. I mean, I get postcards from Stan once a week. You know, I'd get the team poster would come, a quick phone call here and there, tickets to a game. Like, it was just, you know, it was, you know, basically what it is, it's relationship building, you know. And to be really frank about it, you want to make it as difficult as you can for the kid to say no to you. Like, that's really what you want to do as a good recruiter if you really want to get after somebody. So I was involved in recruiting at Simon Fraser when I coached there. And for us, it was, first of all, you got to believe in your program. That's number 1, which is obvious that you wouldn't be there, but you really have to be able to, because if you're not passionate about your program, you're going to have a hard time selling it. So you got to be super passionate about what you're doing. And then you obviously have to be really good at identifying talent. And you know, and I think the thing that I think most people do when they recruit, the ones that aren't great at it, is parents want you to be black and white. They don't want you to be somewhere in the middle. You know, if you really have to tell them what it is, how you're going to play, what type of program you have, why you like your kid, what it is about the kid they're not good at yet, but you can help them get better at, what it is you see in them. And, you know, and at times when parents come to you about recruiting, which coaches did with me, that, you know, some guys that after schools, I was interested in high school, you know what, you're a good player, but you don't have this, and this. And that's great for a kid too, because then it gets them out working on those things. So, so Stan with me, Stan was just like, because I could shoot it, you know, as a big kid, back in those days, 6'6" was pretty big handle. He loved that I could handle the ball. He loved that I could shoot it. And, you know, he really sold me on Simon Fraser, but then he told me, you got to get bigger, you got to get stronger. And so it was good. Like, he was really honest with where I was at. And, it was impossible to say no to him, because I've been getting stuff from him since grade 9.
Oh, okay. So he saw it at an early age. So
yeah,
maybe you didn't see it, but he saw it. So that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically. So now let's talk about this. So you get the Simon.
Yeah.
You obviously end up, like you said, you're a late bloomer. So what was it like as a freshman, maybe not getting all the opportunity that you probably were used to in previous years, and kind of having to grow towards being the player that you became?
Yeah, looking back, I probably should have redshirted that freshman year, because again, I was just so physically not ready, you know, but you know, hindsight's 20/20, right? So, I mean, I honestly felt like I have no chance. Like, I'm not even close. Like, those 4th year and sometimes 5th year guys, and we had some Ontario guys who were even another year older. It was just crazy. So, but when I look back in the whole process, it was crucial, because I'm out practicing against these guys. And the main thing it made me do is it got me in the gym, right? I knew I wasn't close yet, and I was getting wrap-up minutes at the end, and that was it. And, you know, when you're in that situation, but the coaches, you know, the coaches are honest with you, saying, hey, this is what's going on, this is what's happening, this is where you're at, and that's where you're at. Like, if you're honest with yourself, that. But I guess at times you can get down on yourself, but you just got to, coaching staff was great. You just got to believe what they're telling you. Just stick with the process, keep working, getting bigger. Your time's going to come. And, I can actually remember distinct games where my development improved. Like, I can actually remember early in my freshman year, Mike McNeil, who was my head coach at the time, just said to me, "Al, you're great at taking the ball to the basket. You gotta be a little more fearless. Just go for it." So I remember one time actually just getting the ball and just saying, "I'm going." Like, I'm just going. And putting my head down, making that quick first jab step and going and getting fouled and scoring. And I actually, to this day, I can remember that play. And I remember going, man, that was pretty easy. That was pretty easy to do that. And those are the little things that sometimes in a year where you're not playing, there's 2 of those a year. And then the next year there's 20 of them. You know what I mean? And then that's how your games develop. So I actually remember those distinct moments. So you got to be, you can't be afraid to try stuff, even though you're probably not ready to be out there yet. But that's the key thing, is when you do get those moments, you got to try stuff. You got to be out there. So
absolutely. So going from your freshman year to your next year. So you briefly hinted, Mike McNeil was your coach. So Stan had left, Mike took over. Yeah. He was, I believe, 24 when he took over the team. Correct? Yeah. So that's right. Yeah. What was it like taking a coaching with a guy who's literally just a couple years older than you?
I didn't look at it that way. I didn't, because I actually watched Mike play a little bit when I was in high school. So I never, because I was so young. Like, I was a November kid, so I was still 17, turning 18 at the time. So I never felt that. No, Mike was good. Like, Mike didn't coach like a young guy. Like that, I never got that impression thinking back now on that at all. So. No, I wouldn't impact. We had such a veteran team too, with Jay and Tom and a bunch of other guys that have been around a while. So there was no issues there at all.
Absolutely. He was a young guy. I mean, I can't imagine getting a team at 24. That'd be an unbelievable opportunity. Yeah. And then to have such a prestigious job. I mean, Stan must have been a pretty big fan of his ability to come in there and coach right away. So it obviously worked out okay. So now you get that opportunity. You start getting more run. When did it kick in that you were one of the better players on the team?
Probably not till my junior year. My junior year, we were pretty good. Mike Jackal was our senior at that time. He was a hell of a player. So him and I were probably the leading scorers on the team. And and I was starting to get a little stronger, right? Starting to get a little bit bigger, starting to get more confident. It's just starting to get tougher. Like, that's the biggest thing, right? Just playing with that grit and that intensity you need to start playing. So probably not till my junior year before I really felt like things were heading in my direction, for sure.
Jackal was another late bloomer as well, right? I mean, he actually didn't make his senior team in grade 11. And so, these are one of the things you don't see much anymore. Yeah. It's kind of interesting to hear you talk about it, but there's not that many people out there that aren't getting much opportunity when they're in high school, and then they end up being big time university players. It's kind of interesting to see, people like yourself, people like Mike, really, really bloom at university and take their game to the next level.
Well, Stan was such a great recruiter. Like, he saw 6 or 7 years down the road, right? Like, he could see it. Mike was built just like I was. But he had a quick first step. Again, he was 6'7". He could shoot it. But he was, in high school, he hadn't grown into his body. Mike's probably the most underrated basketball player in Canadian history. Like, he's a legend in Germany. Like, he played over in Germany for years. His parents were German. He couldn't afford to come home, man. I mean, he was making so much money over there playing as a German. He was leading the league and scoring every year. But Stan just saw that in guys. He saw that. He saw that potential in guys that he felt were going to be good, and had the work ethic to put it in as well.
Absolutely. So you finish up at Simon.
Yep.
When does national team kick in, and when does that become an opportunity for you?
Well, I took a year off. I had some really challenges my senior year. I lost my brother in high school. Things were pretty challenging personally for me, and had a decent university career, but got through some of those personal challenges and went to work for a year after university, and just played men's league. And, I was a good player, but I was kind of stuck in a bit of a crossroads. And then an opportunity came up for me to go play professionally in New Zealand. And it was that was 2 years after Simon. The real challenge back in those days for basketball in Canada was, once you graduated from university, there was very few places to play to keep working on your game. I mean, there was men's leagues around and stuff, but unless you went somewhere professionally, it was impossible to go work in your game anywhere. So I went to New Zealand for a year, and the thing that's great about that is you're only allowed 2 imports. You're always checking the Americans on the other team, and they're always guarding you. So it was basketball every day for a year, and I really worked at it and had a great year there. And that was 86, and then 87 just emailed Coach D and sent him all my stats. I mean, I was averaging about 38 a game, and emailed my stats, and Coach D, that was my first introduction to him. He said, we're pretty locked in. We're a year away from the Olympics, and you need to tell me what he just said, what do you do that my current guys don't? And, I knew that team really well. And I said, no, I just told him, I said, nobody gets the basket like I do. You bring me in, I'll get to the basket for you. And New Zealand, because the seasons, obviously it's winter down there now, everything's flipped. So I came in 87, I gave up my contract in New Zealand just to go for a tryout in Ottawa with 100 guys. And that's how it all started. And made my university games team in 87, and away I went. Yeah.
So let's talk about that real quick. So you don't really get the 100-person tryouts in Canada anymore. America actually still does it. They start with 400. I've heard from some teams in some of their things, and they cut it down they're like, listen, if you're any good, we're going to give you a shot. Yeah. And they actually cut it down. We do like 30 or 40 kids in the gym. And I think they miss out on a ton of talent because of that. But obviously finances make a difference. But so you had 100 people in the gym. You look around and you got to be like, okay, I got this. I can do this. But you never really believe until you make it through the next cut, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
What's that experience like? Because I don't think too many people have been through that.
That was wild. So this may take up the rest of our time, but it was amazing. So we show up in the gym, and there's literally 100 guys. And I got a few tips from Jay, because I played with Jay at Simon about Triano, about what Coach D's looking for, and it was amazing. And there was literally 100 coaches in the stands, and each one had a clipboard. So we'd always arrive a half an hour. We were 3 a days. We arrive a half an hour before the practice, and coaches would just say, "Be here at 9:30. Practice starts at 10." That's all they would tell you. And so 100 guys would show up, and a couple of guys be talking over here, and I'd kind of gotten the word. So what the coaches were doing is the coaches were tracking how many shots you got off in the 30 minutes before practice, each practice. Each coach had a guy. And as guys were getting cut, there'd be less and less coaches then. And Coach D's philosophy was, I'm going to have to cut this thing down to 12. And 10, 11, and 12 probably aren't playing a ton. But I'm going to make my decision. I want the guy that I know, like if he's not working out in front of me for that half an hour, he's not working out at home. So he had the total shot counts of every guy for 2 weeks, for 3 practices a day in the 30 minutes before each practice. That was his thing. It was amazing. And then he walked into the first practice and he goes, I need to know that you guys can run that way down the floor, and I need you to run that way down the floor. You guys go play. And so we just scrimmaged. And about 8 minutes into the first scrimmage, he brings all 100 guys in. There's like 3 courts going on. He brings everybody in, right? A big huddle. He goes, guys, I need to see you can run that way down the court, and I need to see you can run that way down the court. That's all he said. Back we go. Everybody could run on transition on offense easy, but not everybody could. And that was his thing. And then first practice, he canceled the second practice, and he cut about 40 guys, like right there. Because guys couldn't get – and international basketball, like if you can't run, you can't play. I mean, it is up and down. Especially back in those days, it was really, really up and down. So, yeah, that was his thing. And then and it was literally old school name on the door at the hotel. Like, okay, names are going up. Went up, there was my name, and I was going to Greece and Yugoslavia get ready for student games. So, yeah, it was awesome.
So student games is your first experience with the international level. What's that like? What was a big difference for you?
Well, 2 things happened. So we went to Greece first to play in a tournament before we went to Yugoslavia for the student games. And the first guy I ever guarded, so we played Yugoslavia first game. This is before the war, right? Before they were split. And I would step on the court and high five whoever and going, okay, you got Drazen. I'm like, what? So Drazen Petrovic was the first guy I ever guarded. Like one of the greatest players ever international. So I went to guard this guy, and I'm just absolutely getting worked, right? And I'd heard of him, but I wasn't, and Coach D did it on purpose, right? And I come off, and I'm just devastated. And he's just lighting me up. Coach D goes, hey, if you can guard this guy, you can guard anybody. Like he did that on purpose, and it was so cool because they had Divock and Raj. They had everybody on that team before they split up. So that was super cool. And then we went to Yugoslavia for the student games, and it was in Yugoslavia, and Drazen was like Jordan and Yugoslavia. Like, it was just incredible. So that was really, really cool. So I can distinctly remember in Greece before our first game, the trainer coming by, knocking on the door and throwing me my jersey, like, and getting it and just holding it up and going and just reading Canada on it and just going, holy shit. Like, I remember that moment where it really hit me. Like, yeah, when you put that thing on, it really changes you. Like, it really, really does. Like, you just take on this whole different level of responsibility, for sure. Yeah, it had a huge impact on me. And you know what? And I joke about it, like, when I coach, when I'm doing coaching now, and we hand out Canada jerseys, we're just handing them out like they're candy. Like, back to get something that said Canada basketball on it, only 12 guys or girls got that. That was it, right? And I always tell that story when I do clinics and we're handing out Canada stuff all over the place. I said, well, back in the day, there's only one way to get this, right?
Yeah, it's funny because we played like this is like 10 years ago maybe. When we were playing, I had a good team. We were playing an alumni team, and Ashley Burke was on the team. Yeah. She was wearing her Gonzaga jersey, and she scored like 15 points straight. And I called timeout. I go, okay, she didn't buy that jersey.
That's right.
Like and there's certain jerseys, like, when they give it to you, it makes a big difference. It's like she got that jersey, and she was the all-time leading scorer when she left that place. They send her the stuff for free. There's a big difference between going and buying the jersey or getting one at a camp and actually earning it. And so, I think with Canada, that's a big deal. I remember Rich Chambers telling me a story when he coached the team, the junior national team. They had like one practice, and he said, we're not going to get anything in this practice anyway. He goes, I literally spent the whole time handing out jerseys and getting them excited to play for the jersey. Yeah. And it's it's a big deal for sure. So now you play on the summer, it's the university team. Yep. When do you get your shot up to the real deal, the big time?
Yeah, so we probably had half the guys that were still eligible for student games on that team, and then we went to. So then we come back kind of late winter of '87, and everybody rolls in. And then we used to do Big East tours all the time. It was awesome. We'd go play all the schools in the Big East, like 12 games in 14 days. So my thing was, once I got my foot in the door, I wasn't leaving for a contract anywhere. Like, I wanted to play in the Olympics. Like, I wasn't. So some guys went overseas, and I wanted to be in front of Coach D, like, nonstop. So I did that. So I played in the Big East stuff, and then we played some more stuff in January, February, and then everybody rolled in like in March. Probably brought in 20 guys, and I think he had seen enough of me, and I was starting to score really well. I was coming off the bench behind John Hatch, and that was kind of it. And then I remember beating Calgary. We were down to 16 to head down to the Olympic qualifying tournament. And, Gordy Herbert was there. There's some guys that had been on the team but didn't come in late. And they told me, we got some guys that have been here before that, I know you've really committed. That's awesome. But we do have some guys coming in. There's no promises. So I just busted my butt and played really, really good. And and they kept me, and I made the Olympic qualifying team, which was amazing. So off we went.
You go to qualifying. Canada doesn't make it that often. So even now with, we got 12 NBA guys, we're still not making it. No. You've got the opportunity to say, hey, listen, if we do this right, we can actually go to the show here.
Yep.
What was the mindset of the team to kind of bring it together and actually make it happen?
Well, we took it, this is classic, we took it that it was us against everybody. Like, we had no media at the airport when we left for the qualifying tournament. Like, I mean, zero. Like, nobody. We got word that whether it was Basketball Canada or Sport Canada, whatever, they hadn't booked tickets for us for the flight to Seoul, there or back. Like, we weren't going, right? The women had been really good and had done well. And they had all their tickets booked, but the men's, we actually got word of that. So we were pissed, and we were so psyched, and that group was super tight. Like, Coach D was a team builder. Like, it was super tight. And the other thing, everybody had a role. That was the thing. Everybody knew their role. Like, I knew if I came off the bench and scored 25, then I wasn't starting the next game. I knew exactly where I was. I was playing 22 a game. I was coming in after Hatch. I just knew exactly. I mean, almost to the point where guys, I remember one game, Carl Tillman, we're playing Spain, and they went from man to zone. Carl just got up off the bench and walked down. He just, yep, there you go. Like, he just knew, like, he was a shooter and he was going in, right? So that's how tight that group was. So, I mean, the challenge in Uruguay was, it was in Uruguay. I mean, it's just brutal. Like, I mean, we're talking, to take it right to the end, or to qualify, we had to beat Uruguay in Uruguay. That was the last game. It was us against Uruguay. And it started off, we had police with dogs around our bench, and second time up the floor, Eli gets a coin thrown, like visualize Roger Arena, somebody throwing a toonie from up top. He gets hit right in the head, splits him wide open for like 15 stitches. It's crazy. Wow. There's Roman candles being shot from like side to side. Oh, it was craziness, man. Craziness. We called our first timeout. We're just getting pelted with coins. So we're having timeouts with like our practice tops over our head. The cops and dogs all left because they were getting in. So we were like on our own, man. It was mayhem. But we just went off. We just spanked them, and it was hilarious. So we figured out during the game, if there was like free throws, you go stand right beside one of their players, because then you wouldn't get hit with anything, right? They wouldn't throw anything at you. Well, at the end of the game, the fans were, because we're up 20 with like 8 minutes left and it's over, and the fans turned on their own team and they started throwing coins at the Uruguay players, and they started hanging out on our bench. Oh man, that was craziness. And I'll never forget, God, going back to that long, we were bawling, man. We were crying. It was just, yeah, it was incredible. It was just so cool to.
Is he cutting yet?
And I always say that 88 team really is kind of an unforgotten team. Like, it's Canada's best finish at a non-boycotted games, and I don't know, it's 70 or 72. Like, that was a really special team. And
who was on that team? Who were the main guys on that squad?
Eli at point, Hatch, John Hatch would have started at 3, Jay at 2, Barry Munger, who played at St. Bonaventure in the post, Wayne Yearwood, who played at West Virginia, was on that team. Dwight Wallen, Kaz is on that team. Obviously myself. So it was a really well-rounded team. We weren't real big. Like, we were 6'8", 6'9", so we weren't really big. But yeah, we got it done, and we got in, and it was so we beat Argentina, which was huge. Brazil got in, and Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico ourselves and Argentina. And Brazil.
Well, they had to book your flights after that, so that's good.
Oh, we were, and then when we came back, this even frosted us even more. We come back, and of course, all the media's there, right? And we're just like, yeah, okay, now here we go, right? So, yeah, but we were tight. Sometimes you got to find that inner drive somewhere else, right?
No, and I think that's a big deal for a lot of people. I mean, I think you got to, when you watch Michael Jordan's acceptance speech at the Hall of Fame, a lot of people didn't like it. I loved it. I thought it was, because it's him. It's exactly him. He found anything that he could to get himself going, and it didn't matter if there was nobody there to take a picture. That was it. You didn't need anything else, and you got to find something that gets you going. I mean, even if it's just an internal dialogue to get yourself going every day. I mean, it's hard. I literally have a quote on my desk. You have to prove it every day, and so
yeah, you do. And then like I think the other last thing I'll add on this is that it is a team sport in the end, and that's in the Last Dance thing. I thought it was amazing, but I thought Phil Jackson's role was a little bit understated in that. Like, you got to have guys with drive, but in the end, like, that's what got us in. Like, Coach D we were going to qualify. There's just no doubt about it. But when you look back, there's no way we should have qualified for that. Like, he just created a sense of belief. And, I think about how tight that team, we had the team banquet after, and he asked every guy to go around and talk, and nobody could do it. Like, nobody could get the words out. Everybody was so emotional about it, and I'm still emotional about it. It was just, it's a special time. And I think that's a big part of it. You got to have that inner drive individually, but great players are able to bring everybody else in. Right. That's
absolutely. Well, let's talk about that real quick. Eli Pasquale, he's a BC guy, grew up, around here, and he passed away just recently, but obviously he was a tremendous leader, one of the great players we've ever had in the history of the country.
Yeah.
What did he bring to the team and what made him so good? Like, what was the thing that made him the player that he ended up being?
Competitive as hell. Just absolutely competitive. Like, we used to do these baseball games, we called them, where it was just 5-on-5 half court stuff, and 3 strikes and you're out. I mean, when he lost one of those, he was choked for 2 days. Like, he was competitive and physical. And when you make the national team, it can be super, what's the word I'm looking for? And you start visiting these other countries and seeing these other teams, there can be a sense of, we're not as good, or a sense of, holy shit, here we go, this is crazy. Like, do we really belong? But Eli, as your point guard, was a sense of we belong. That's what he was. Like, we are good. Like, we're very good. And we do belong with these teams. And that's the way he played. And he was physical, and he was chippy, and he didn't take any shit from anybody. And he could play with the best. That was the key. Like, he could play with the best point guards in the world. That was the key. Like, he was that good. And he ran the show. He ran the show. When we were on the floor, Eli ran the show, and we were all, that's a sign of a great point guard, is just by their body language or how they carry themselves, they're in control. And he was also the kind of guy that would just poke you in the chest and go, let's go. I'm not losing this baseball game. Like, he was one of those guys. And we all respected the hell of him. And he was a hell of a player. Yeah,
absolutely. So you end up, you make the Olympics.
Yeah.
You come back. You're like, okay, wait a second here. We're not just going on this thing. We plan on let's do some damage while we're there.
Yeah.
And so the mental adjustment from trying to qualify, not making sure you're going to qualify, to like, let's go see if we can do some damage. Yeah. What did you guys address that at all, or was that something you brought up, or was it just something that just happened?
The thing we talked about a lot was the distraction at the Olympics. There's nothing like the Olympics. Like, it's like, you talk about everything that you can be distracted by. It's there. It's the biggest event in the world. It can be overwhelming. We didn't march opening ceremonies because we played the next day. That was a team decision. There's, you're staying in dorms, but the Libyan team was across and they're doing their prayers in the morning. You got the good-looking girls from every country in the world running around. You got all that going on. You got just distractions everywhere. So that was the main focus going in, was, okay, like, we belong here. Let's go get it. But let's all be aware of what it's gonna be like and what the distractions are gonna be. So we spent a ton of time talking about that. They made the whole Ben Johnson thing go down while we were there. That was super. We actually knew about it before anybody, because our team doctor was, we had a meeting the night before it actually all went down. He was a team doctor. So he said, so then all the media, that's all the media want to talk about. So there's so many different things that can distract you there, but that really was a focus before we played, for sure.
So you start playing, give us this is when the Dream Team was playing, correct?
This is 88. No, this is pre-Dream Team. So this is Robinson, Danny Manning, Mitch Richmond, Stacey Ogman, that whole group. 88, yeah. 92. No,
still Hall of Famers. We still Hall of Famers. It's a unique opportunity. So you go in. Who do you guys? Tell us a little bit about what happened in the tournament and what it was kind of.
Well, for me personally, I had 25 against Brazil and 25 against the U.S. We lost. Brazil was very good. Oscar Schmidt was on that team. We lost both those games to start. We had the U.S. We were up 1, I think, late. We ended up losing by 3 or 4, I think it was. But like, personally, I remember walking out with like 4 minutes left, being tied, and I'm having the game of my life. And like, I think we were the first televised event of the Olympics on that Friday night, I think it was. And they were going to show, if you watch the video, it's pretty funny. Al McGuire says, yeah, okay, Al, what's this game going to be like? Canada versus US. He goes, even if they had Wayne Gretzky, this game is NC, no contest, he says. And they're going to go show 4 minutes of us against the US, and then they're going to go to diving, because Greg Louganis, they'd sold all this advertising for diving. And we stretched, apparently we cost them like $1 million in advertising, I heard after the fact. So it was awesome. Anyway, we had them, and it was really interesting. Like, after the game, I'm sitting, they called me in because I had a really good game, and they asked me, well, what would you, some American guy, see, everyone was like, holy shit, you almost beat the Americans. And American media guy says, well, how would you feel if we brought the NBA guys in? Like, back then they said that, like 4 years earlier. And I'm like, well, we can only control what we can control. I said, all I know is David Robinson's pretty good, and Danny Marr's pretty good, and Mitch Richmond's pretty good. So anyway, they actually started talking. They were getting questions about that in 88. So anyway, so we lost a couple, and then we beat a couple of teams that we should beat. And then the thing about the Olympics is it's pool play. You just got to win certain games, right? And then we had a huge win against Spain to get us up against Yugoslavia to get us to the medal round. And then Yugoslavia in '88, that was, to me, that's the best basketball team I'd ever seen, pre-Dream Team. Like that was Petrovic, Kukoc, Raja, Vrankovic, Vlade Divac, and I think I'm missing 2 or 3 more, but that team was so good. And I still say to this day, if that team, if we hadn't had the war in '92, if they could have played the Dream Team in '92, and Drazen, I think Drazen passed away just after the Olympics in a car accident. But I would have loved to have seen that Yugoslavia team play the Dream Team. But anyway, we beat Spain, and then Yugoslavia beat us in the medal rounds. So, and we ended up finishing 6th. So I think that was a pretty good accomplishment for us. A, to get there, and B, finish 6th was pretty cool.
Absolutely. So what happens after this? So it's got to be, obviously you're on an all-time high, and then you kind of got a little bit of a downer. So what? Because nothing can contain that level of intensity in your head.
Yeah.
You end up coming back, and now what?
God, that's a great question. Now what? Then we played in '89. We just kind of kept a few things going, and I did my ACL. Like Ken Shields took over the team. I did my ACL in '90 and missed the 1990 year. I was gonna be captain of the student games team. We had an exhibition game in Ontario, and I did my ACL. I was so devastated because now I'd kind of take over Jay's role. You know, I kind of moved up. I was starting, and I was, if not the captain, I was Eli and I were kind of the main guys. And then during that time, it was determined that pros were going to, well, NBA guys were going to be allowed to play. Anybody that at that time, anybody that had played in the NBA couldn't play internationally. You could go overseas and play internationally for your country, but the NBA was the one league you couldn't play in. And after I came back, it was determined that NBA players were going to be allowed to play. Now that obviously affected the US, and that's the reason it came in, but it also affected, it was really hard for countries like Canada, well, all the countries really, because we all had 3 or 4 guys that had played in the NBA and were playing. So now the whole challenge of when do we bring guys in really became a huge factor. So in '90 and '91, a bunch of us centralized, and of course the NBA guys weren't. And then so Ken had to deal with the challenge of bringing guys in last minute. And that was really hard, like super hard.
It's still hard today. They still got the same problem. So I don't think they figured it out yet.
Yeah, so then we head to so I make that team, and we head to the Olympic qualifying tournament in Portland, and that was the first setting, and that's where we saw the Dream Team. We played the Dream Team, and but that was hard. Like we brought in Leo late, Billy Winnington late. We had 3 7-footers. Mike Schmack, who played for the Lakers, Billy Winnington, Greg Wiltshire was on the team, Kaz. But the biggest thing that hurt us is we were in Puerto Rico the week before, and Eli broke his foot, and that was it. We lost our point guard. And when you lose your point guard internationally, you're done. Like we would. So to make a long story short, we lost to Venezuela by 2 to go to my second Olympics. That was heartbreaking to lose by 2 to go to second one. But with Eli, we'd go for sure. But yeah, that was devastating. But yeah, the Dream Team game was something else. That was crazy.
Talk a little bit about that, because you know, people nowadays, you're getting some documentaries now, so you kind of get a little bit of a glimpse of what that was like. But at the time, that was the greatest thing that had ever happened in basketball, right? I mean, you got all the best players all playing on the same team, and you get to play them. What? Give us a little rundown on what that one specific game was like.
Well, back then there was, there's still the debate about whether NBA players should be allowed. I'm just like, I want to play against the best players. Let's go, right? And I want to play with the best players in Canada too. So let's go. So I was all for it. The whole Magic Johnson HIV thing was still big back then. There was lots of questions about whether we would actually play against them. I'm like, come on. And our doctors they assured us everything was cool. So that was fine. But no social media by then. So like they took it super seriously. Like PJ Carlissimo, every gym we were in from 91 to 92, he was there. He followed us for a year. Like they took it seriously. Like one of my favorite photos I've got is I got pictures of their entire team around a chalkboard. It's got my name on it. It's got all my tendencies written. But like they took it really, really seriously. But nobody'd seen him anywhere. No social media. And so how it works, I don't know, Ecuador played Chile or something on the Friday night. And then after the first game, they called it the Parade of Nations. And all the countries get introduced, right? So ladies and gentlemen, Canada, Brazil, we all come walking out, we're all standing there. And then they just go, and the place is packed, of course, but they just go, ladies and gentlemen, the United States of America, and out comes walking the Dream Team. Well, it was like it was like people were freaking out. Reporters, just photographers sprinting down to the floor. Like it was full on bedlam. It was crazy. Like it was 15 minutes before the crowd calmed down. Like it was nuts. and you knew everybody in the front row. Like, it was just celebrity. It was the thing back then. So, but it was good. Like, it was the start, right? I mean, they beat us. I think they had beat us by 40, but it was like I ran into Charles Barkley at a golf tournament one time. We had a beer together and we were talking about. I told him I played against, and he goes, "Oh yeah." And he actually asked me what I thought made their team so great. And I kind of chuckled a little bit, and I said two things. I said, number one, you guys had no egos. And that was Magic's team, and he ran the show. Michael was your defensive stopper. And he goes, "Yep, that's right." And I said, "Then your depth." And he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "You guys were all competitive with us till we're down 11 or 12 going into the half. And then, when we bring in 10, 11, and 12, they bring in Patrick Ewing, Karl Malone, and John Stockton, right?" So it's like, and that's where they just got everybody right through the Olympics. It was just with their depth, right? So, but no, I had a good game too, and that was super cool to have a good game against, the best. I could see that I could get to the basket against, the best team ever, and it was, it was a great memory. So that was pretty cool.
Okay, so you finish up playing. Went your career ends, and then you decide you're going where are you going to work, and what do you end up doing?
Well, in 1990, my wife got offered a job up here in Whistler, and I was away in Puerto Rico, and I said, well, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm not home for 2 years anyway. So we moved to Whistler, and we were centralized in Victoria, so I'd bomb back on weekends, and then I had a high school teaching degree at the time, but there was actually no high school here in Whistler, so I'm substitute teaching in permanent Squamish, but that that drive in the winter was kind of brutal, and golf was always a passion, and ended up getting into the golf industry, and I've been in it ever since, and kind of mixed in some coaching at the high school level, and
let's talk about that. What's so you got two kids, you're raising them in Whistler. There's no culture for basketball for sure there.
Zero.
You gotta. How do you? But both your kids legitimately love the sport, and they've taken it very seriously. Obviously, your upbringing had something to do with that. But what's it like trying to build something out of nothing there and kind of getting them excited to play basketball?
Well, it was challenging. Like, there was literally nothing here. So my first run, like in the mid 90s, I coached the kids in Pemberton, and that kind of got my passion back. Coached the senior boys, went to single A provincials, lost in the final single A provincials. So I kind of got the coaching bug back. And then I started a national league when they were like in grade 3 or 4. We just did a little community thing till they got into grade 8 and developed. But it was very challenging, and it's still very challenging because this is a outdoor rec town. Like, it's skiing, mountain biking. It's not a team sport town. So I was able to muster up 9 or 10 girls and put a pretty good team together. But we needed to stay healthy for sure to be really. I mean, we're successful. We made provincials every year, but I think if we stayed healthy, we really could have made a run. But it was super hard. Like, when I went into the high school, they didn't have basketballs. I asked if I could bring a shooting machine in, and they're like, "No, there's nowhere to put it." They didn't have jerseys. I mean, it was a joke. So, and it's tough. And you got teachers that have been doing things one way for a long time to come in and try and do something different. But, but once you get successful, all of a sudden everybody jumps on the bandwagon. You start bringing trophies back and banners back and stuff. Everybody starts to jump on the bandwagon. So it was good. Obviously, it was fun because my kids were involved. But the thing that's super unique about this town too is these kids have literally known each other since from when they were born. Like, they're Whistler kids, and they literally have gone right through. And it's such a small school that all these kids know each other so well. So it's been tough trying to get enough kids to involve to really make it successful. But we had a little run, and it was fun.
So that's the poster behind you is that team, and then you got two other posters. The one that's kind of cut off is you and Tiger Woods. What's the story behind that picture?
Oh, we're tight. No, that was pre 9-iron days before Tiger's incident. Yeah, so we were at Nike had a big event out in Nova Scotia with Tiger, and it was a made-for-TV event. Nike just had a bunch of us, bunch of their accounts, which we're a Nike store here. And yeah, it was cool. There's only 50 of us in watching Tiger, and Tiger played against Hank Haney and Charles Barkley. Like, they were best balls. They had a little made-for-TV thing, but there's no fans. It was just us 50 of us. So it was cool. We got to have breakfast with him and dinner, and he was, and obviously watch him play from super close and get some photos and stuff. And so that was cool seeing him. But being able to hang out with Charles too was really cool. Like, that was great. Talk about he's still pissed about losing to Canada in Edmonton, like in 81 or whatever that was. All he wanted to talk about. He said, "Where's Channel? Let's get him on the phone. You guys stole it." I go, "Stole what?" He goes, "You guys stole the medal from us." I go, "We beat your ass. What are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh, you stole it." "Charles, what are you talking about? We beat you then. We beat you." So I said, "Charles, of all the things you've done, you want to talk about 81 in Edmonton?" He goes, "Oh yeah, it's still fun. I want my medal, man." He was great.
Charles, that picture right there with the Canada team. What's that one? Give us a little rundown on what that picture is.
That's us with the dream team. So like they came up to us right before the game and they said, "Do you guys want a picture with these guys before we play?" I'm like, "No effing way. I don't want a photo with these guys." And half of us were like, of course, the young kids, yeah. And so we had to do it. Hey, I'm in the back there. I got my eyes kind of down. I'm like, let's go, right? So yeah, but in the end, obviously, it's great to have it. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
You know what though? That mentality is the important thing, right? Like I think you got to respect your opponent, but you're not trying to give them nothing, right? Like you got to go take it from them. And so like we're not here to admire you, we're here to beat you. So it's like I think a lot of kids nowadays are kind of missing that. You mentioned briefly about Jay. Obviously he was a good player, but his career has kind of, being an NBA coach, being one of your good buddies. Yeah. Give me a little rundown on what made him special and what's gotten him to the point where he is now, where he's like a legitimate coaching NBA rotation guy. Like he's going to be around till just the day he decides he's not coaching. He's going to be in the NBA. And that's kind of, we don't really have that. I mean, you're starting to see a little more of it, but you're not getting. He was kind of the first one that kind of gave us the belief that Canadians could kind of do that sort of thing.
Well, I think Jay's development really starts. You got to go back to SFU and playing for Stan. Stan always used to say the border is just a line. And we used to go into some of these places where, the butcher's the referee, it was like, you're just getting screwed so bad down there. So we had to be 20 points better. We knew that. So Jay just developed this will to win and this toughness that, he used to love those Big East tournaments I was telling you about, man. He used to go back there and just light it up. We used to love taking those guys. And I think you're watching them on TV all the season before, and now the next time you're playing against them. I used to love that. So he was tough. He was single-minded. He was focused. He worked really hard. And then his big break came. Him and I was doing TV for the Grizzlies back in the Grizzlies days, and he was doing radio. But he actually asked me if I wanted to go coach up at that, because I was his assistant at SFU, and he asked me if I wanted the head job, because he was going to leave SFU and go do the radio community relations for the Vancouver Grizzlies. And I had kind of had a lead on the TV side, so I turned that down. So him and I kind of worked together with the Grizzlies for 2 years. And so Jay got doing radio. Like I did 42 games, but he did every game. So he was on the road all the time, and he got to really, a lot of familiar faces just from his playing days. And he got to know some coaches and stuff. And then the break, then he got in with the national team, became the national team coach after SFU. And they centralized in Toronto. So then he got to know Lenny Wilkins a little bit, and he was around the Raptors. And then he kind of got in the back door with the Raptors. And yeah, it just kind of grew his career. But the one thing about Jay is he never, like a lot of people, like you would be intimidated to play against the dream team or intimidated to coach it. He's like, that's not Jay. Like he's going to put in the time and know he's good enough to be doing it. And he had a super tough time in Toronto. Like when he became the head coach there, like his mandate, don't win more than 17 games, whatever you do. Like when you're told that by the GM, like that's a tough way to go, right? So, but he put his head down and worked hard at it, and that's the challenge of the NBA is every team's in a different rotation and a different cycle. And as a coach, you have to be willing to coach to what your franchise, goals are, right? So, no, he's done great. And, he's so well respected in North America. Like when he left, when Basketball Canada didn't rehire him, Coach K called him in like 3 days.
It's funny. I went to UNLV. They had practice. There's USA team. And I'm like, Jay Triano's here. Like the fact that USA thought he was good enough to bring him in, and we didn't think he was good enough. It's like, who is running this place? Like, what are we doing?
No, I know. What are we doing? And just I'll throw in a really classic story. Like the reason Coach K brought Jay in, he knew him a little bit, but
like I don't know. Did you go to those practices? Because he essentially ran the practice. I'm talking Jay Tran. Like he was like, anytime they had anything, it was like, Jay, what's your thought on this? And it's like, did they just stop the entire practice to get Jay's opinion on what's going on with this? I'm like, oh my goodness. Wow.
Well, because they were playing international basketball, and it's so different, right? Like the screen, you can move on screens. It's way more physical. And but the classic story is Jay's having dinner with Coach K and Jason Kidd, and Coach K just says to Jay, he says, "What do you think?" He says we're gonna get beat. Jason Kidd's like, "What?" He goes, guys aren't taking it seriously. He says, "These international teams are good, and we're gonna get beat." And Jason Kidd goes, "I want you to tell everybody that tomorrow." And so they're in the team meeting. Coach K's going, and they're about to wrap it up. And Jason goes, "Hey, everybody, hang on. Jay's got something to say." And then Jay just, "Hey guys, you guys aren't taking this serious enough. You're gonna get beat." And that was a real wake up call for like those NBA guys needed to hear that. And now we're into like 96, 2000, 04, and they were starting to get beat. The teams were starting to beat them. And yeah, that's why he was there. And so he's super well respected around the league for sure.
Yeah, it's cool. So, last piece. I want to take, a couple quick questions. You go back in time and you give yourself a young Al a little advice. What are you giving him?
Wow, I would say that is a tough one. I've been super, super fortunate. Like I said, we talked about losing my brother when I was young, probably just getting more help for that. But we didn't talk about stuff like that, back when we were young. And that really affected me through my SFU year career. So, I encourage all kids, I think mental health and grief and loss is now we're finally starting to talk about those things, and I just encourage kids, and it's super cool to have kids my age, because they talk about it in school all the time. So it's great. So looking back, I wish I would have seeked out more help for that back in those days, because I think I would have had a better career at SFU. But from SFU on, I'm super, I really got my mind right, and I was super focused on what it is I wanted to do. Yeah, other than that, I would just say, and I guess the advice I would just give everybody looking back on my career is you have to find ways to get better on your own that are game-like. And I was really good at that. Like, people used to look at me in a gym, and like I'd be talking to myself or pretending people were guarding me or lifting people up and pretending I was getting fouled. Like, really, that's the biggest challenge when you lead national teams, is like, how do I get better on my own that's game-like? And that's probably the best advice I could give. And again, having Jay around, learning how to do that. And really, when I got good and I was on the national team, I came back to play against the Simon guys. I just used to tell them, "I'm going to beat the crap out of you because I have to, because this is the way I need to play. Because of the league I play in is crazy physical." But guys actually respected it, right? So that's the best advice looking back that I would give to myself and give to kids now is, you think you're here, somebody else is here. When you get there, somebody else is there, and you got to keep taking it. And that's the only way you're going to make that level of play, is if you're the best player right now at whatever it is you're doing, you have to go somewhere else and I call it finding a better game. You have to find a better game. Jay and I used to travel down to the States, down to Washington State, and play an AAU team called the Brewster Packers, because we couldn't get a game in BC. So we play AAU ball in Seattle, fly all over the U.S. and play against other AAU teams. That's how we got better too. And it's hard. It's not easy, but you got to find a better game all the time.
We obviously got to coach together this year a little bit, and the thing that I liked about your coaching style is we're very different in our coaching styles, but I think it's a good blend because you're an extraordinary detail. Like your hand needs to be like this, and you need to hold like this, and you need to, like, it's a like right breakdown to the inch.
Sure.
Where'd you get that from?
Well, I think I got it from watching so many people shoot the ball badly, just as an example. You know what I mean? And I think if we're guilty as anything as coaches, I think we're guilty to change kids, to change kids' form, whether it's shooting or defense. And I think we're afraid to do it later. You know what I mean? Like, there's some kids, and you watch them grade 11 and 12, that just can't shoot it, but we go ahead and we let them shoot it. So I'm not afraid to dial them back, because I think you can correct something really fast. But just to take shooting example, when you look at every great shooter, there's 2 or 3 things that they all do. It might look a little bit different, but nobody's shooting the ball with their thumb in their left hand, right? Nobody starts the ball here and leads it here. Like, nobody's off balance. You know what I mean? There's core things that great shooters all do. So I just try to find those core skills that I think are really important to different parts of the game and make sure the kids understand that. Let them go find their own niche and their own way of doing it. But so that's always been something I've picked up on. And frankly, being around the NBA for a few years, and you watch guys that are making millions of dollars getting their shot reconstructed. Well, if those guys can have their shot reconstructed, a grade 11 kid can, you know, and that's happening all the time at the NBA level, all the time. And then lastly, just not being afraid to get a kid out of their comfort zone, you know, and trying to teach them that level of compete that needs to be played with. And if they don't have it, trying to find ways of just getting into that next level of compete, because it is very competitive. Very competitive.
Yeah. Last question.
Yeah.
You obviously went from playing high-level sport to running a business now.
Yeah.
What are the things, the core values that kind of translate and most effective, and what's led to the success you've had at the business level?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, so I'm the general manager of the Worcester Golf Club, and we have like 5 departments. You know, we got maintenance, customer service, food and beverage, and HR. Like, we have all these different pieces. And we all have our silos. Maintenance is over there, the kitchen is over there, but we're a team. Like, we are all, so we have very clear standards, very clear goals, and we want to be the best, just like sports. So we try to continue. Like, my mantra is, when we think we're there, we're getting worse. So let's keep trying to improve everything we're doing, whether get the golf course in better shape, keep improving the food and beverage product, having super fun team functions, like actually finding ways to get everybody together. Now, that's been challenging with COVID, obviously, this year. But yeah, I think my basketball and coaching background has really helped me in this role. That being said, not everybody has that level of intensity or that level of want. So, like Coach D used to always say, you need to know who you're throwing the ball to. Right? And Jay might catch that pass, but Rommel's never going to catch that pass. So if Rommel doesn't catch that pass, even though it was a great pass, it's your fault, not his fault. So I need to know how to inspire people in different ways to try to get to that same goal. So that's really, and just like a coach, same idea as a coach. You know, you got to know your players, you got to know what makes them tick, and it's no different in the business I'm currently running, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I'm glad we got your story out there. I think it's important.
Cool.
I think, you know, some of the new age stuff could learn from the old stuff. And I think it's important that we kind of find a way to figure out what's led to success in the past, and hopefully we can make it happen again in the future. So thanks so much, Al. Really appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Good to see you. Thanks. Take care.
Ciao.